They were halfway down when their father appeared at the foot of the stairs. He glared up at them angrily, his skin strangely green under the fluorescent light fixture. He was holding his right hand, drops of red blood falling onto his white lab coat. "Stay out of the basement," he bellowed, in a voice they'd never heard before. Both kids shrank back, surprised to hear their father scream like that. He was usually so mild and soft-spoken. "Stay out of the basement," he repeated, holding his bleeding hand. "Don't ever come down here. I'm warning you."
You can't scare me, not with the basement of botany. Maybe a sentient dummy, calling all creeps.
Boo dudes,
And dudettes.
welcome to Calling All Creeps. I am your co-master of ceremonies, Matt, with my co-master of ceremonies, Dave.
We're scaring them up. Scaring them good, scaring them right.
I'm scared.
Good.
It's the spookiest month, October.
I'm on the edge of my seat. It is
Oh,
October.
there's a gnat in here.
Oh.
Sorry for the listeners, for the gnat that's in there.
Check our audio.
Yeah.
Nat Ryan. That's what I'm going to name it. Do we ever say your full name on here? Or am I going to jail now? We'll just censor it out.
That's fine. Well, I'll just give everyone my address at the end of the episode. So, today's book is book number 2 from the original series, Stay Out of the Basement.
Ah.
Now, this was published...
It says July 1992, which, if you listen to the last episode, thank you, by the way, for our extra long
Yes, you rock.
pilot episode. But we believe this one was probably late because they were doing one a month. The next one we'll be discussing, Monster Blood, came out in September of 92. So we're going to say, we'll go with August for this one.
Right, so that would follow.
We like to start with the book and just kind of state some facts about it and set you into the mind of a boy like I was, a boy like you were, or whatever kind of thing you were.
Yeah.
I don't know, a bat, a plant in 1992. So in 1992, August, the song was This Used to Be My Playground by Madonna, but End of the Road by Boyz II Men came out, and that's a
good
jam.
Yeah, that's a banger.
It rips.
Yeah.
I love it. And that took the world by storm. So End of the Road. The movie, Death Becomes Her, which I never saw.
Me neither.
But producer Cheeb.
Producer Cheeb, my wife Cheeb.
Yeah, is a big.
Had a lot to say about it.
She had a lot to say about it. It seems interesting. And then Unforgiven.
Unforgiven, which I think is the Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah.
I don't really know anything about it, other than I can think of what the artwork is, which is somebody in like a trench coat and a fedora, sort of turning away. I think it's Jason Mraz, actually.
Is this straw little hat?
Yeah, he was 6 at the time, but
Very cute.
it resonates. It stuck with me.
Very cute. Other things about this book. This is one of the 2 original Goosebumps that does not have Jacobus art. This is Jim Thiessen who did this cover.
What? For really?
Yeah. So this is one of the few. It's iconic, I think, with the really spooky hand reaching out. With the new art, of course, Matt, we know, is going from the Matt Public Library of Bumps.
That's right.
I'm going off of a new one. The new one, same thing pretty much. It's just a hand reaching through the door. There's some vines coming out and thorns on the knuckle. All that basic stuff. Along with that, it's one of the few third-person written books in the Goosebumps series. And the title was actually taken from the 1973 film The Forgotten, which also had the title Don't Look in the Basement. That was like the co-title to it.
And as we know, RL likes to think of the title first, story later.
Yeah, he'd be like, what is a basement? And why should I stay out of it? So of course, we remember from the last episode, you just pick a thing, and then you pick why it's a ghost.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like coming up with a lyric and building a song around it.
Exactly. And I think that's all of my fun facts. There's some references to the 90s in this. Early on, they reference RoboCop and Arnold Schwarzenegger in the same paragraph.
Right. And so we're trying to figure out what Schwarzenegger movie this could possibly be. I put a little post-it here on this page. In the OG books, it's page 14, chapter 2.
In the new book, they edited out Arnold Schwarzenegger's name, which I think is funny.
Yeah,
but they keep RoboCop because, Soldier Boy made that Doesn't he say, like, let me do a RoboCop?
Yeah, I think so. And then he
All
says, whoa, what's
Yeah.
his thing he says?
I don't know. It's all about coming on backs, which, I mean, hey, man, I don't want to yuck your yum.
But we can all relate to that.
Yeah. Is there something on my back? I don't want to look dumb. Did somebody RoboCop my back?
So it says they're watching TV, Casey and Margaret, the kids in this book, and their friend. And it says, is he building a Frankenstein monster or something, Diane demanded, or some kind of RoboCop? Wouldn't that be
Nice.
cool? Shut up, Casey repeated shrilly as Arnold Schwarzenegger bounded across the screen. I don't know. When was Terminator 2? 1991?
Terminator 2 was 1991. I was saying that it's possible that it was not on TV by this time, but the more I think about it, it's a possibility because I think things went a little bit quicker. It was VHS and TV.
Right.
So it could have been Terminator 2. My other guess, which, like, how they talk about there's a man with a gun on the screen, I thought Commando maybe.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we don't really
this
know.
was Arnold's prime, right?
This was Arnold's prime.
This is post-Predator. He's
Well,
like...
late 80s was where he had a bunch of stuff. Now he started doing silly things after this.
Yeah.
He started doing twins, and he was like,
Yeah.
and then the pregnant one. And
Did you ever see Pumping Iron?
I've
The
seen
Schwarzenegger
just
documentary?
clips of it where he's just like, I use my muscles. It's like coming.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to lift because it's like calming. I like calming. It's great. Anyway, it's on Netflix. If you want to
Anyway.
just check out that part.
So that's my favorite part of the Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Well, there's that.
Nice.
Also, if you want to go back, there's also a reference to The Fly.
In the book?
In the book as well. Well, it is The Fly in the book. There's a
Yeah.
part where they basically say the plot of The Fly. So I think this sets early 90s.
Yeah.
Pretty cool when it comes to our different references, and just these are very 90s kids. I think even more than last book.
Yeah. I think part of the reason that I've returned to this series and that I like this series now still is, of course, there's that nostalgia, but part of that nostalgia is I like occupying that space in the early 90s again in a way that Goosebumps allows me to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was telling Dave when he got here, this is from my own private library.
Of course.
And I have this sticker on here from Food Town where my mom bought it for me. And it says April 1995, and it was $3. And what a joy to still see that and have that little sort of memory trigger.
If you wanted to pick this up at Barnes & Noble now like I did, $6.99.
Yeah, well, inflation. Right?
Inflation.
Thanks, Obama, as usual. Anyway, so let's dive into a little bit about the synopsis of this book. Just sort of a brief summary of what's going on here. So, stay out of the basement. We're dealt two more kids around roughly the same age range that we talked about last time, 11 and...
Like 8 or something.
Yeah.
Just 11, maybe even like 10, 11, 12.
Older sister, younger brother.
Yeah.
Casey and Margaret. Casey the boy, Margaret the girl. And their father, Mr. Brewer. We never get a first name on Mr. Brewer, right?
Jim.
Damn.
No, I made that up. It'd be good, though. If it was Jim Brewer.
The charismatic comedian.
Yeah, of course.
So Jim Brewer has recently been let go from his job as a scientist.
As a science man.
He's a professor, or
He's a botanist.
he's a botanist. Yeah.
It sounds like he's doing research at the college. Like, you know how people can get grants to work through or for a college? That's what he was doing. So
Yeah.
he was studying at a college. I don't think he was a professor, but he was working for them on some sort of secret passion project that got out of hand and ended up getting him fired.
Right. So the kids speculate about what could have gone wrong to get our dad fired.
Which their shitty friend...
Diane,
who is a bitch.
Diane sucks.
Diane really sucks.
I have a lot of fuck Diane notes.
You know how people say, like, you shouldn't call a woman a bitch? Like, and that's rude?
Yeah.
I think I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I would never want to call a little girl a
100%,
bitch.
yeah.
But like, you gotta calls it like you sees them.
Look, I'll call a spade a spade. If a dude's being a bitch, I'm going to say, you're being a fucking little bitch, Casey.
Diane is a bitch.
Diane's being a bitch.
Right off the bat, like, oh, your dad got fired? It's probably because he's a fucking weirdo freak
Wait.
scientist.
Since this came up, let's just talk about it really quick. So in chapter 2, here's where I first knew Diane was an asshole. Because she says to Margaret, she says, "You think you're still back in Michigan? It's always a pretty afternoon here," Diane said, chewing loudly. "I don't even notice it anymore." And what a bitch. So the Brewers are from Michigan. Diana's being an asshole. Like, oh, it's nice here all the time. Oh my God, it sucks.
Okay, so also, I don't feel bad calling Diana a bitch because she's imaginary, and she was written to be a bitch.
Yeah.
Because she also comes over to help with math, and then it was just like, fuck it, we're going to get you in trouble. Let's figure out why your dad's crazy. We're going into his basement, where he told everybody not to go to.
Yeah, she's very judgmental about their family.
Yeah.
It's not right.
She also really makes fun of Casey. She's very rude to Casey.
Has some burns on Casey?
Definitely got some
on
on Casey. Yeah, I just wrote, Diane is a bad influence. Fuck math. Let's touch leaves.
It's a good
because she literally says, let's not touch anything. Then she goes downstairs and she touches everything.
Yeah.
So what they do is they go downstairs. It's extremely hot. It was originally a playroom. There's a billiards table.
Well, so we didn't establish that...
Dad leaves.
Yeah, Dad has a basement. And he is... Dad, since he's been fired, he is sort of continuing whatever passion project he had in the basement of his home. So, kids being curious.
Yeah. Diane being a bitch.
They go down into the basement at a certain point, and Dad says, as the title suggests, the titular, stay out of the basement.
Yeah. You got that tits. Stay out of the basement. Stay out of the basement.
Hashtag says, stay out of the basement if you can muse on whatever her dad sounded like.
Also, he threatens them right off the bat.
Yeah, it's a big time threat at the end of, I guess that's chapter 1, right?
Yeah, he says, you'll be sorry.
You'll be sorry, yeah.
That's fucked.
Which I think kicks off a long pattern of abuse.
It really does. Page 1, I wrote a note that says, immediately sets the scene. Dad is a dickhead. All these notes were written while I was drunk on a plane, so... Keep that in mind.
Well, they're even more astute then.
I think so. It's that air up there. It's the pressure. Just lets elevation. Me be me.
Yeah.
So they go downstairs. They walk through, and the plants are just kind of like moving at them and wiggling, and they just something's off.
Yeah.
A lot of weird plants. And then this is when a plant starts making noises. Right? Is this when they hear like a moaning plant?
Yeah, they'll hear moaning throughout, and basically these plants have autonomy for some reason. They seem almost sentient, and they're moving toward the kids, or they there's a lot of low moans, things like that. So it's a scary place to be, but the kids are continuously drawn to it because they don't know what their father is doing. Their father's getting more and more distant while their mother is away, sort of helping a sick relative. So tension builds between the kids and their father while their mother is away. The father keeps doing weird things, acting strangely, acting distant. And then at certain points, there are big reveals in terms of certain physical characteristics that their father has or exhibits.
Yeah, and they also get caught in the act of being in the basement a bunch.
Yep.
After the first creepy part, when they all run away, Casey has to run back downstairs while Margaret stalls because Casey was like, boy, it's hot down here, and just strips off his shirt.
This is insane. Like, so there's a moment, where Casey strips off his shirt while he's down in the basement, and RL does a good job of describing how hot and stuffy it is down there, and it gets very claustrophobic. But the fact that he forgot, so he comes back up and forgets that he doesn't have a shirt on, it's insane.
Real talk. Once I hit that cool air, my nipples will let me know immediately shirt is gone. And I don't have special nipples. I have like basic nipples. I have stock economy nipples.
And they sit down and have a conversation while shirtless. Like, it takes him a while. This is unbelievable. I had to stop and really make a note and try to figure out what was going on here. Because Casey is fucking stupid.
Yeah, but also Diane is egging him on. Diane burns him like super hard too. This is... Okay, Diane being a bitch, number 1. So she's just acting nice in front of all the parents. And she says, "Bye, Mrs. Brewer," Diane said, waving. "Have a good trip." Then Casey says to her, "How can she have a good trip?" Casey asked sharply. "Her sister's in the hospital." "You know what I mean," Diane replied, tossing her long head back and rolling her eyes. So maybe that was Casey burning her, but I wrote that backwards. But I thought that was funny. And then they when they're downstairs, also she burns him. Casey says, "It's too hot down here." Casey complains. He pulled off his t-shirt over his head, dropped it onto the floor. And then, what a bod, Diane teased.
Ooh. Where does this take place?
The basement.
Yeah. Wait,
I don't know where.
It's they're from Michigan, but do we get a location on this?
I don't think so.
Well, wherever they are, I guess they don't have sex there.
It's like right next to that Footloose town.
Yeah. Some Puritan town where they never have sex. Anyway.
Plot basically that they go down. Casey goes back down to get his shirt because he sucks.
Yep.
And a plant grabs him.
Yes.
Like physically grabs him. Margaret goes down to see what's taking him so long. Dad catches them. The plant lets go. They're freaked out, obviously.
Yep.
Dad's showing some weird stuff. He always promises that he's going to let them know what he's doing. He's like, I wish I could tell you. Wish I could tell you.
Yeah.
But he has a big cut on his hand.
Yep.
That's always bleeding and doesn't heal for the course of the book, which they say is over 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Since it first happened. He wears a baseball hat.
Yeah, the Dodgers cat.
Which you learn later is to cover leaves that are growing from his head.
Yeah, so his hair falls out and leaves grow from his head. He's bleeding green blood. And I'll just say it all at once, right? And he's eating plant food.
Out of like the sink.
Out of the sink, like a fucking savage animal.
So basically he does what I do to shredded mozzarella cheese late at night. You ever do that? You lean over the sink and you shovel it in?
You just pull like a shirtless Casey move and you just like pour marinara and mozzarella all over your body. I do that.
Oh no, I seem to have forgotten my shirt next to the murder plant.
And...
Oh, he also sleeps in dirt and
he
worms.
sleeps in dirt and worms. Yeah. So Margaret discovers one morning when she goes into his bedroom, a bed full of dirt and worms. So to cut to basically the end, this father of theirs has locked up this guy, Mr. Martinez, who used to work at the school.
Who was, I guess, his boss.
Yeah, his boss at the school. Mr. Martinez came by one day to see like how progress was going on the projects that he's continuing to do, which is weird.
And he's also right up. He's like, I got dropped off, so I don't even have a car here.
Yeah, that was when I came across that detail, I was like, what the fuck is this? Why do I care? Like where his car is?
I was like, oh no, he's fucked.
Yeah.
He's just like, hey guys, I'm so easy to murder.
Yeah.
No one will miss me.
So yeah,
Thank God my family's dead and I have no loved ones.
You're a more intuitive reader than I, because I was like, I don't give a shit about the details of your car. Then it was clear that he didn't have a way back, and you know, if he drove, then his car would still be there, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, their father kidnaps Mr. Martino, locks him up in like a storage locker that's in the basement, and it's revealed that there are two Mr. Brewers.
There are.
Dr. Brewers.
Plant one?
There's a plant, Dr. Brewer, and there's a man, Dr. Brewer, who's also sort of a plant.
And then we have the which one do I shoot?
Yes, that old conundrum. The old, did you watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
No, I did not.
There's an episode where there's two Xanders, and one is like a really cool Xander, and the other is like...
The normal Xander?
Yeah,
I know
like
who Xander is, and he's just like
anxiety-ridden.
Yeah. I get that.
So there is a which one do I shoot moment, and I know, but it's a conceit from, you know, a ton of shit.
I mean, if the new Xander's cooler, just shoot the real one.
Right.
Just pick the one you like.
Yeah, this one's
In this,
fun.
she ends up shooting the plant one because he says the name, like her like pet name or whatever it is.
Princess.
He calls her Princess and Fatso. Because she's so skinny that her whole family calls her Fatso.
Right. Like, get it? You're not fat.
You're not fat, you stupid piece of shit. I love you. This is really a story about a strained family, which I have a lot of notes on that we'll discuss. I feel like this could be a darker, deeper, emotional journey through a strained family relationship.
Yeah. They call Casey dirtbag.
Yes,
and,
they do.
The mom calls the dad small dick throughout it, which is really devastating for his ego.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I think that comes up, like, the dad's really mean, but I mean, every chapter ends with the mom saying, you'll never satisfy me.
She's constantly masturbating using the biggest dildo. And their father's weeping, green tears.
Yeah, and he's actually growing just the vaginas down. And he's growing body parts, along with finding the extra him. which
Yeah.
is locked up. That's what the moaning was. It was their dad who the plant kicked his ass, and he's just like, oh, oh.
Yeah, I guess we should mention what the project was in the basement, which was like he's combining human DNA with plant DNA.
So that if he can grow that, he can... Basically what they did with like... Was this around the time that they grew an ear on the rat? Remember
Probably,
that?
yeah.
Yeah,
It
so
was
it's
all
something like...
90s.
It's that project. They're going to
Yeah.
heal humans by growing plant people so that they can like... I don't know. So he's growing like tomatoes that have human faces and they're like screaming and shit.
Yeah.
And that's where the noises are coming from. But
Yeah.
all right.
And that's it. Yeah, Margaret ends up killing what you think is the correct father.
It's very metal too.
Yeah. Yeah, he chops him in half with an axe. She chops him in half with an axe.
I'm just going through my notes on like the themes and stories. Like, I think we got there. See, Dad is totally just growing weed. That's one thing I thought, because he's always like, "Don't go in my basement. I got special plants. I can't tell you about them. Maybe when you're older, I can discuss this."
Yeah.
Josh thinks eating dirt is funny.
Oh, yeah, he did think that was funny. That was a strange... People react to things strangely in this book.
Oh, Margaret catches Dad plant jerking off in the bathroom. He's just like holding his hand and rubbing his hand and shooting like green blood all over the place.
Yeah.
Dad shits the bed literally because he shits bugs, which we learned in that bed scene.
Yeah.
Diana's a narc because she says that they should call the cops. This just says, "Hey kid, eat my butt slime," which is I don't remember that.
And what does
happening.
that signify?
That signifies... Oh, at one point, Plant Dad tries to force them to eat the slime that she saw coming out of him.
Right.
The ending sucks so much. So it ends with them being like, well, that was a crazy adventure.
Yeah.
And then they're playing outside and throwing the Frisbee around like they were in the beginning, I believe. And they're hanging out. She's reading a book. No, I think she's reading a book out by like staring out at the hills. Then she hears a whisper at her feet that's like, "Margaret!"
Yeah.
And she looked down and there's a small yellow flower nudging at her ankle because the dad destroyed all the plants.
Yeah.
There's like 8 pages of him being like, "Well, gotta go back down and murder more plants."
Yeah.
But the ones that he could save, he puts in the yard.
Right.
And then the flower whispers, "Margaret," and it says, "Help me, please help me. I'm your father, really. I'm your real father."
Right.
So like, I think that was kind of a power play ending.
Yeah. I mean, so we're to assume that it's still the other plant dad, right? Whereas usually, like that's pretty transparently
It is.
like the dad combined his own DNA with the plants and he planted them in the yard, so like this tracks. Whereas usually the twist at the end is like,
That's the twist.
whoa. But this is a twist, but it's like we can see that like, oh, they're like growing another one of the fake
Just like,
dads.
this is an endless cycle. It's like a weed. You can't get rid of it.
Right.
pretty cool.
But it's not as... This book, I think, overall wasn't... When I tried to think about what was scary about this book, like, it didn't seem as frightening as some of the other books.
It's just upsetting. It's just about a shitty family. It's just
Yeah.
about an abusive dad and a really sad mom.
Yeah. Let's talk about his abuse and where that starts and why we think that. So, for me, that was triggered from the beginning. I think the dad was abusive from the end of chapter 1 when he says, "Stay out of the basement, I'm warning you," right? He threatens his kids because he's like growing plants. It's not a proportional response.
I think, too, the good writing, if we want to get into that, because I feel like this is something I really like. The descriptions of the mom and the relationship that they had was really, really awesome. Mom's sadness is described all the time about just her, like, trying to justify, like, what her husband's saying and how she's being treated by the kids and everything. I'm trying to look for this. Having dad home has made mom really tense. She pretends everything is fine, but I can tell she's worried about him.
Yeah, she doesn't seem to want to deal with any of her children's concerns about their father. Always just like, he's fine, or he's really into his work, or these sort of dismissive excuses.
And just things like when she's going to be with her sister, who's very sick, she even talks to the kids. Think he'll even notice I'm gone, she asked in a loud whisper. She meant it to be a light remark, but her eyes revealed some sadness.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
I have something on page 10 that's similar. This is chapter 2, I guess, at this point. But this moment, that first moment we brought up where he yells at them to stay out of the basement and threatens, Casey, Margaret says, well, I guess this is third person, but it seems like the tone throughout is sort of threaded through Margaret. It had been 2 weeks since he yelled at Casey and her to stay out of the basement. They had been tiptoeing around ever since, afraid to get him angry again. But in the past 2 weeks, he had barely spoken to them, except for the occasional good morning and good night. They're kind of scared of him, and he's super detached. And R.L. Stine, if we're talking about writing, does a really good job of creating the detached father throughout this book.
And I think I put a little star on this because I feel like this is the point. Don't you see? Dad has changed a lot. Even since Mom has been gone, he spends even more time in the basement. That's because Mom isn't around, Casey interrupted. And he's so quiet all the time and so cold to us, Margaret continued, ignoring him. He hardly says a word to us. He used to kid around all the time and ask us about our homework. He never says a human word. He never calls me princess or fatso the way he used to.
Yeah.
He never. And then it's just about how he hates that, and they talk about how Mom is really just kind of sad all the time and just trying to hold it together.
Yeah.
It's really tough. So that's why I think this book is really about like a dad who's growing a weed farm who lost his job and is trying to pull everything back together. He's trying to make it big, but it's all strain, and there's this one mother who's trying to hold it all together while he's tearing everything apart.
Well, he doesn't care. It's something, a good section here to piggyback off of what you said exactly is, I don't know what chapter this is, but page 38, their father reappeared carrying the lab coat he had tossed over the front banister. Mom got off okay? Margaret asked. He nodded. Yeah, so Mom got off okay? Margaret asked. He nodded, I guess. He pulled on the lab coat over his head. I hope Aunt Eleanor is okay, Margaret said. Dr. Brewer's reply was muffled and as he adjusted the lab coat and straightened the collar. Later, he said. He disappeared in the hallway. They heard him shut the basement door behind him. So, I mean, just single word responses to like, is our family member, like the sister of the woman you married, like, I hope she's okay. And he says later.
Yeah.
It's like what a teenager would say.
He's kind of like, fuck off.
Yeah, right. I have plans to go fuck.
So I made a little game too out of this book.
Yes.
This is something I think we could do in almost every book. That'd be fun. So these are a lot of weird things, and one thing that R.L. Stine does is like we see it as the reader, but we see it as the reader of somebody who's reading a book that the entire cover is just goo and slime.
Yeah.
And it's called Goosebumps, and we know it's a horror story, but if you were a kid in the 90s and this shit was happening to you, how would you justify it? Mm-hmm. Which brings me to a segment I would like to call the rationalization game. This is where we put the song. Whenever the song comes, like a...
It's time to rationalize.
Yeah. All right. So, here's the things that get rationalized in the book. And I'm going to ask you. We'll go...
Truly insane.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Dad gets fired.
Well, he probably took off his pants again.
He does do that a lot. That's weird.
Yeah.
Also, I would say I'd rationalize that as like Dad's been really mean, intense. Maybe he's mean at work.
Oh, yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah. All right. Dad has a bandage on his arm for weeks.
He hit himself with the weed whacker again. He's an idiot.
I'm gonna say that Dad, maybe I'm a kid and I don't understand how wounds work. And whatever. Maybe
the
he
healing
broke something.
process takes 3 months.
Yeah, you're old. You break.
Yeah.
All right. Dad won't take off his hat.
It's the playoffs. He loves the Dodgers. He needs to give as much support as he can.
That's true. Good luck.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Good luck.
Okay. When a plant attacks Josh, because they were just like, well, maybe it's just like like vines.
Right. That's what I would probably say. Like it was wind or something, right? Like when something insane happens, you're like, oh, the window was open.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got punched in the face. That doesn't explain that. But
I would probably think like, well, Dad's probably just working on his puppetry act so that he can find a new career.
Okay, yeah.
A plant moans.
I probably satisfied it the way it should be satisfied.
Water and sunlight, man.
Yeah.
Really goes above and beyond. Okay, Dad eats fertilizer. The funny thing is, you have to know, Dad wasn't eating like plant food. It said fertilizer at one point. Dad was literally eating cow shit. Your dad is eating shit.
Well, I'm like 9 at this point, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it was the dirt cup I brought home with like the pudding and
Oh,
the
yeah.
Oreos and the worms in it.
That was a big 90s snack.
Yeah. So I'm going to say dirt cup.
I would even just be like, well, maybe that's good for adults. Who knows?
Sure.
Maybe that's a different thing.
Yeah. Maybe eating shit is good. You ever think of that?
All right. You find your dad's boss's clothes in his sweaty basement.
I mean, they were jacking off together.
I thought maybe if they wanted to go swimming together or had a sleepover. You know when you sleep over your cousin's house and you don't have your own jammies, so you borrow their jammies?
Right. Yeah. Maybe he borrowed some jammies.
I'm thinking he borrowed some jammies.
That's cool.
So really nothing bad happened at all. Dad was just having some jammies and playing some puppets.
Yeah. If you think about it, really nothing happened in this story.
It didn't at all.
Because this can all be explained away.
Yeah, I mean, up until the point where the girl attacks her dad with an axe and then hands the axe to her other dad to chop up the dad brutally in front of her.
Let me watch.
I can't finish unless you do it, Dad.
Yeah.
And the mom's there just like, what's going on? I'm going back to Michigan. This is fucking bonkers.
I'm glad that we're doing this because this just emphasizes that there's so much rationalization throughout the book from both the kids. I
think every Goosebump.
Yeah, right.
Because the stuff they're seeing doesn't make any sense, but R.L. Stine isn't just like, oh, it's a witch. Like, as a kid, you'd be like, there was a lady that lived down the street from us. We called her a witch because she was like really old and kind of creepy and her house was falling down a little bit. And she had a one-eyed cat. It was a black cat with one eye. Right. And it would just wander the neighborhood.
It fits the profile.
Yeah. So we'd be like a witch. But if somebody was just like, is that lady really a witch? I'd be like, well, no.
Right.
So if I saw my dad never taking his hat off or eating fertilizer, like plant food, I would just be like, Dad's really into fitness.
Right, he's doing
But R.L. Stine does that.
Yeah.
And that's part of the... most of my good stuff is really...
About the writing?
About the writing is a lot of Casey being frozen. He does a really good explanation of anxiety.
Yeah.
On page 46.
Well, there's so much self-doubt in that rationalization. It's constantly there, chapter after chapter of Margaret just asking herself these questions, like, "Dad eats mud now."
Yeah,
but it's persistent throughout the book. Since we're talking about writing, I just want to bring up some of the plant writing, like when they go into the basement. That's kind of when he's at his best, is describing how suffocating it is down there. So chapter 3, page 18, sort of kick that off. It says, the plants, in fact, resemble jungle plants, leafy vines and tall tree-like plants with long, slender tendrils, fragile-looking ferns, plants with gnarled, cream-colored roots poking up like bony knees from the soil. So a lot of imagery here and sensory detail.
So I loved the thing is he used a lot of verbs describing the plant.
Yeah.
Which I liked because he added action to something that wasn't even moving yet.
Right, yeah. Poking up like bony knees from the soil.
I'm going to say part of that is on my bad list. Mm-hmm. So he does these things. He has some of the worst similes and metaphors of all time.
Mouth as dry as cotton, which
is
not
used twice.
It's not unique to this book, but yeah, it's
used
used
he used
twice.
it twice in this book.
It's too much. It's his go-to dry simile.
Not only that, but that part you just read, they said that like tree-like plants. He basically says like these trees they look just like trees, and that bothered me. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. So this initial description I just read, I think is good. Tree-like plants is not awesome, but it's evocative. I understand that they're tall and they sort of tower over the kids, right?
And it's not as bad as this one. Another low moan, a mournful sound, muffled, like air through a saxophone.
Does it say that? I can't believe I didn't flag
Page 23,
that.
and I just wrote, haha, what? The kid, he's like, oh, and someone's like, a scooter to bop.
Jesus. Yeah. So I think there's a few. I wrote plant notes, and I have an arrow, and then 3 bullets, and I'll give them to you now. One is overuse of the word tendril is on every fucking page. It's like he just learned it, and he wants to like show everyone that he knows what it means. The descriptions of the plants often sound sexual, and I'll give you 2 examples.
Well, I'm ready. Hold
Pretty
on.
happily.
1 second. We need to get some folly for
A
this.
loud zip.
Wait. Was that loud enough?
I'm gonna up it in post.
All right, I'm sitting back down.
So page 83, long sinewy tendrils. When you use the word sinewy, you know you're on something.
Maybe.
Yeah. Drooped from thick yellow stalks, right? So we're not sexual yet. Sinewy tendrils is sort of sexual. Broad green and yellow leaves bobbed and trembled, shimmering under the white light. Leaves slapped against each other, making a soft, wet sound.
Sweet.
A fat tomato plopped to the ground.
I also wrote that because I just thought of like this tree just took a liquidy dump in front of these kids.
Just plopped out a
I
tomato.
was so excited to talk to you about that liquidy tomato dump.
Well, I have more.
Good.
Okay, so on page, so chapter 17. The plant groaned again. Tendrils, again, snaked along the dirt. Leaves clapped against each other softly, wetly.
Wetly. Can we change the name of the podcast?
Yeah.
To Wetly?
That's it, Wetly. We'll
That's
also
my new name. I want to be Dave Wetly.
start a band called Wetly.
Here's a line I liked but was bad. Was very funny. This is them rationalizing again.
Yeah, of course.
Plants don't cry and moan, Diane said, her eyes on the vast trough of plants that filled the room.
It says trough?
Trough.
So stupid. That doesn't make sense.
So she says, plants don't cry and moan, Diane said. These do, Margaret said. No shit. I thought that was so funny.
What a great way to de-rationalize.
These kids are shitting at each other constantly.
Yeah.
It's very funny. Especially Casey shows up and he's just like, yo, check out my boy nips. And they're just like, fuck you.
I love that. Yeah, plants don't breathe. And then it's like, are you fucking blind? Look. That's great.
There's another great description. Certain parts are scary. If you're a kid seeing this shit happen, like, it becomes the thing at the end. It's very Carpenter-esque, having the face like screaming on a plant. Just husks instead of corn hanging off of these husks. There's arms and feet.
Yeah, should we talk about that?
I think that's
Let's
all.
just
Well, I
dive
want to
into it
say
now.
one thing. When she finds Mr. Martinez in his stuff, he's like, it's his jacket and tie.
Yeah.
Margaret's mouth dropped open into a wide O of surprise.
Oh, I did make a note of that. Yeah.
I
It's a
just
bit
imagine
much.
like a blow up doll face.
Yes.
Where she's like, oh, like Mr. Bill.
Yeah, it's something that can be simplified to Margaret was surprised, right? Because the level of writing, we don't expect more than that, and we should just get it.
So another funny thing is because I was very drunk on this plane when I was reading it, I've highlighted some pages that I didn't write down in my little book.
Okay.
I just turned to the beginning of chapter 15 and italicized. It just says, that squirrel turned out to be a friend.
Yeah, there's a squirrel in the basement at one point.
It has nothing to do with anything. The squirrel comes
No.
in and they let the squirrel out, and then she was like, that squirrel is a friend. Because the squirrel showed them how to get out of the basement.
Literally, the reason for the squirrel to exist is to like make R.L. Stine be able to have a scary ending. So it's like a false, like I was grabbed by the plant, but actually it was the squirrel. And then the second reason is so they knew there was a window, but that's so stupid because it's their fucking basement. They don't know there's a window there.
Yeah, they know there's a pool table, but they don't know there's a fucking window.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh, while we're sort of somewhat on good writing, I want to bring up my favorite description in the whole book. And I'm wondering if you notice this too. It's chapter 16. For me, it was page 94.
It's probably like 95 or something.
Yeah. So it's the first part of chapter 16. So
All right.
we're going through all this shit with their dad. But here, chapter 16 starts. And there's only, how many chapters in this book? 21? Yeah. So
But they get real short near the end.
Yeah. So we're near the end here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read it. Margaret spent Saturday morning biking up in the Golden Hills with Diane. The sun burned through the morning smog, and the skies turned to blue. A strong breeze kept them from getting too hot. The narrow road was lined with red and yellow wildflowers, and Margaret felt as if she were traveling somewhere far, far away. They had lunch at Diane's house, tomato soup and avocado salad, then wandered back wandered back to Margaret's house, trying to figure out how to spend the rest of a beautiful afternoon. I think this is like, it's like they just got married and they're on their honeymoon. It's amazing. It's such a nice respite from the rest of like like these two paragraphs could just exist like separately. I find comfort in these two. It's like a digression in a good way.
What RLS does the best in this book is pacing.
Yeah,
he paces things. The suspense in the basement scenes are really good, and he plays it and he elongates it to the point where even though we know what's going to happen is going to be stupid, it still adds that tension. And I wrote a lot about that.
This is a more interesting book than Dead House. Dead House, we know the conceit right off the bat. It's a scary house.
Yeah.
This is like
stay out of the basement.
A unique kind of villain because it's someone that's close to them. Again, there's the abuse theme. And, you know, it's just sort of, it builds that tension throughout. Like you're talking about the pacing. It's because it gets more and more tense. The plants get more and more menacing.
It's sad, too, because the plants aren't really ever the bad guy. Like, they're never, other than when the plant grabs Casey, it's not bad. Yeah. Like, at no point are they, like, sleeping upstairs in their beds and, like, a fucking vine tries to, like, go up their butts. Yeah. It's not like Evil Dead.
They stay contained.
Yeah. And I think the scariest thing, which this is the villain, this is the bad guy, and the main scare for the book, is explained on page 64. Like the Nintendo. And it says, how could I have thought that? How could I have been so terrified of my own father?
Yeah.
And then it just says terrified.
On its own line. Period. As a sentence, it says
it was
terrified.
The first time the word had crossed her mind.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because it's your house, your family, your mom's gone. She's depressed and basically in shell shock. And the person who's supposed to be taking care of you as like an 11-year-old, you are at this point afraid of them.
Yeah.
You're in fear. This isn't you got bad Spanish grades and your dad's coming home.
Yeah.
This is the only person you have to rely on now is your brother, and dad's just a plant.
It says as much from the page you just read from. At the bottom of the page it said Margaret realized that she was terrified of her own father. If only mom were home, she thought.
Yeah. So this is a broken family, a broken home, and at the end of Flower Talks. That's pretty exciting.
Anyway, next week, Monster Blood.
Monster Blood's going to be fun. Real quick, I think I'm just going to go over the insult list.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to score for Casey and Margaret. Keep score. So Casey, Margaret calls Casey a hot dog. Casey calls Margaret a dork. Mm-hmm. Margaret calls Casey a 2-year-old. Casey calls her a 1-year-old. Shit. Then Casey calls her fatso. Margaret doesn't have any retort.
Well, how could you? You got to leave town and change your name at that point.
Casey said that Margaret throws like a girl, which she is. But then Margaret says that he throws like a chimpanzee.
Shit. So like really hard and violently?
Yeah, in his own shit. And then the ultimate insult between brother and sister is when Margaret tells Casey to go suck a lemon.
Lemon is interesting.
That's like the 90s kid for go fuck off. Like go suck a dick.
Right. Go suck a lemon. Suck an egg, I've heard.
Suck an egg, yeah, but this was R.L. Stein just being like, lemons.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine R.L. Stein sitting there and he's enjoying like a Sprite and he's like, go suck a Eureka!
Yeah.
Oh, by God, I've done it. All right, so I think we're at the end.
Yeah, well, can we talk about the tomato with a face?
Yes, we can.
Well...
That's my favorite song.
Let's do this.
Billy Idol.
Tomato with a face.
Tomato with a face.
Let's go with top 3 spooks and scares.
So this is what we do. We do our top 3 spooks and scares. This is our ending thing we decided.
Yes. This is our segment. We should come up with like a song for it or something.
Yeah. How about this? Spooks and scares.
Spooks and scares.
Best dressed.
Best dressed and
Also
alternate title.
Okay. Write that down, everybody.
Top 3 spooks and scares.
I'm going to go with, I think my favorite scary line is page 103.
I would agree, Dave. This is one I had.
All right. Where do you start yours? Inside? A cluster? She and her brother both cried out when they saw the plant with the face.
Yeah, that's
How about we'll start there. We'll go back and forth, and we'll just talk spooky.
Okay.
Can you add spooky music behind this?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, okay. She and her brother both cried out when they saw the plant with the face.
Inside a cluster of broad leaves, there appeared to grow a round, green tomato.
But the tomato had a human-shaped nose and an open mouth. from which it repeatedly uttered the most mournful sighs and groans.
Jerk off for me, it said. I want you to come, big boy.
I'll never get red if you don't rub me, said the tomato. Also, my name's Greg. And it's funny because Greg the tomato from this book became kind of the mascot for Goosebumps.
Yeah, and in the story, married Casey. That's canon.
It said, little boy.
Yeah.
Those nipples of yours were very enticing.
They start to do stuff. Later on the page, Casey says, this is, and then it has a long M dash, and it says, gross. But he just goes with it.
I imagine when you say that, you go, this is a gross.
Gross. Anyway.
I just spit into my book. These pages are very thin. I can see through the words. All right.
Cool. That's one of the scares. I have another one.
Cool.
Right? Because top 3 spooks and scares. This is...
I just had one.
Just had one?
I didn't know
All
we were
right.
doing top 3, but...
Let's do top 2.
Top 2? Okay. I'm going to pick another one while you're doing that.
I would say like all of chapter 11, because that's when their father comes up and makes them a weird plant lunch and forces them to eat it.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
And it's so tense by the end that it just makes one really uncomfortable. And that's what this book does well, where I think that's why we struggle to find specific moments of spookiness, because the whole thing just has a certain tension, and it's not overtly scary in the way like a haunted house or a ghost is, but it's just solid throughout. This is like when I was teaching and I knew like a paper was like good, but like I didn't have constructive feedback to give it, specifically like pointed feedback as I could with other essays. I would just be like, this is solid. I'll put 2 comments in it and it gets a B+. B+ is always the way to go. So this book gets a B+.
That was a very good description of it. That was like, that's how I know that you have your master's. And that you were the professor.
Yes, thank you.
This one I thought was going to be scary, but it's just like, it's when they're hacking, dad is hacking other dad apart with an axe.
Yeah.
It says, the capless Dr. Brewer moved quickly. He picked up the axe, took 3 steps forward, pulled the axe back, and swung with all of his might. The Dr. Brewer in the cap opened his mouth wide and uttered a hushed cry of alarm.
A hushed cry of alarm.
He's like, alarm. The cry was choked off as the axe cut easily through his body, slicing him in 2. A thick green liquid oozed from the wound, and as the man fell, his mouth locking open in disbelief and horror, Margaret could see that his body was actually a stem. He had no bones, no human organs. The body thudded to the floor. A green liquid puddled around it. Princess, we're okay, Dr. Brewer cried. Like, it's to the point, and one thing that stuck out in that, I wish it was awesome, and he wasn't just like, oh no, like a hushed cry of alarm, but they say the body, like the human was cut in half, and until they're like, oh, it's a stem.
Right.
Like, when they say that too, I'm just like, was it just like a bush with like a one of those nose and glasses with eyebrows on it? She's like, oh, it's just a bush. Like, he makes it so horror, where dad just like winds up and pops this guy in half. And then he's just like, oh no, it's a plane, so it's not scary. Yeah. But I thought that was cool.
Right.
All
yeah,
right.
They do underplay the death of this man who has served as their father for like the whole book, as far as we know.
He's a bad dad, though.
Yeah.
Old dad used to like Frisbee. That's how you know he's chill as fuck.
He's
like, yo, dudes, let's put on my Sublime cassette.
I don't back the Yeah, they underplay a bunch of things. One of the funniest scenes in this book is when they see the leaves on their dad's head, and they have a conversation with him about it, and he's like, "Guys,
it's side effects.
Not a big deal. This is what happens." And he literally has no hair, and there's leaves now.
Yeah. Well, of course, these kids haven't gone through puberty yet, so they don't really know.
That's true.
I didn't get my junk leaves until I was 14. Okay, so best dressed.
Best dressed.
Speaking of junk leaves,
I would say Mr. Martinez without pants.
Oh, that was good. I was going to go dad because he knows how to accessorize. He's got a neat hat, leaf hair, and a bandage.
That's true, but Mr. Martinez is in his tidy whities in a storage locker.
That's very true. I'm going to give it to him, too. You win.
Yeah.
Alternate titles for the book. Hit me with it.
Ooh. My tendril dick.
Mine is Dad's Secret Plants and Why the Police Took Him Away.
That's much better. You clearly wrote yours down.
Oh, yeah, I did. But I'm going to switch it to Greg the Tomato, How I Spent My Summer.
Ooh, yeah. A soft tomato plopped. That's now canon.
Every Greg is plopping for the weekend.
Oh,
the white font.
The white font on the front of the book, it says something's waiting in the dark. I'm just noticing an ellipsis is 3 dots. RL uses 4 all the time. It's very vexing.
Because he says everything, there's a beginning, a middle, and a twist. That's the twist.
It's the 4 dots.
Period. He's ending the sentence that's supposed to go on.
Yeah, he ends the sentence full stop and then adds 3 more periods.
This is one of the weird ones where the new book actually has a better tagline than the old one. On the back it says, live plants, dead people? I mean, you kind of have to read the book to get it, but like it's kind of more enticing. You're like, huh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we got Monster Blood coming out. Where can we find you online?
I am at This Is Matt Ryan on Instagram.
On Instagram?
And my Twitter is @_ James Earl Bones.
Okay. I am Creepy Uncle, creepy with 2 3s on Instagram and Twitter. Also, if you need to find us, we have a Instagram now and a Twitter.
Yeah, on those
hopefully we'll
social
start
needs.
using those up. If you guys have questions or want us to discuss anything or just bring up certain topics for 90s kids horror nostalgia, it is Calling All Creeps Pod.
That's it.
So
Across
reach out to us there. Yeah, on both of those. So reach out to us. We're going to be posting photos. We've been working real hard to make Goosebump memes.
Yes.
And having a blast.
Yeah.
If you guys have any you want to send in, we'll definitely post them.
Oh, absolutely.
This
questions
is a group
asked.
thing. We got a lot of fun things we want to bring for you guys. This this one set to? This is kind of like our Halloween episode, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It'll be out around that time.
Cool. So happy Halloween.
Yeah. Extra special boo dudes and dudettes to all of you.
Of course. Hope you guys have a safe boo.
If you want to dress as a screaming tomato that plops to the ground, you could do that.
Yeah. I would.
Mm-hmm.
Touch that stem. All right. First person to cosplay as Greg the Tomato wins my heart. All right.
Until next time.
Boo.
Boo, dude.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye. They were halfway down when their father appeared at the foot of the stairs. He glared up at them angrily, his skin strangely green under the fluorescent light fixture. He was holding his right hand, drops of red blood falling onto his white lab coat. "Stay out of the basement," he bellowed, in a voice they'd never heard before. Both kids shrank back, surprised to hear their father scream like that. He was usually so mild and soft-spoken. "Stay out of the basement," he repeated, holding his... Shit. I was so close.
So far.